Hello everybody! Today we're going to be learning how to build an Oyster Reef Ball. This guide can be used in the future for you guys when you're building these Oyster Reef Balls, and hopefully this will be a good instruction tool for you guys. First off, you will be using fiberglass molds. These fiberglass molds will be used to build the Oyster Reef Balls. First of all, you want to secure these molds to a plywood base, which is a 3x4 sheet of plywood. Also, you may want, for extra stability, you may also want to build them on top of a wooden pallet, which will provide better stability when building Oyster Reef Balls. Once we have our plywood base and our molds, we must drill holes through the plywood base so that the bolts can go up through the mold, so we can secure it down to the plywood base. So, as you can see, this bolt is up through the plywood base, through a hole that was pre-drilled. So, once we stick that through, pull that through, you can begin by placing the hole on the mold aligned with that bolt. And also the same for the other side. Push that bolt right through the wood and place them together so they kind of fit together. The two sides of the molds begin to fit together. Then we can begin by securing the molds to the plywood. We can do that by using these flat sheets of metal, which will put pressure down on the sides of the mold to make them flush with the plywood base. So first we can take this round and place it right on the bolt. Then we can stick the wedge in, and you can take your hammer or a mallet, it doesn't matter, and bang on the wedge lightly, making sure not to crack the fiberglass mold. Now we see that this side of the mold is becoming tight against the plywood base. We also have to do the same for the other side. So we can take a wedge, metal wedges, you can stick it through the bolt and begin to tap lightly like we did on the other side. Now we have a secure mold to the plywood base. You must use, for this part you're going to need a bolt, two washers, one washer here, so these are going to be placed on the side of the mold, so the holes on the top. This brings the mold together. So you'll have to stick this peg. These can give you a little trouble, so you might have to bang them in. Okay, once the peg is through the hole and on the other side, you place another washer on the other side. And then you can use a wedge to bring the sides together tightly. And same thing, you're going to bang on the wedge, and you can begin to see the sides of the mold come together. See it? Also, we must do the same for the other side. You need a peg, a washer, through one side. Same on this side, you might have to bang the peg through. Another washer on the other side. And now for the other side of the mold, which you must secure also. Use the same thing. A bolt and a washer. Stick that through the hole. So might have to bang that in to get it to fit. Take another washer on the other side and a wedge. Bang on the wedge so you can see the mold coming together. The mold is secure. Also use 3-inch Husky C-clamps to tighten down the sides of the mold. You do not have to use all the pegs and washers. You can also use C-clamps for the bottoms. Just do it snug and tight so you can see the mold come together at the bottom. And you're ready to start making them. Next, you must add sand. It can be play sand. These are 50-pound bags that I bought. You must add at 2.5 to 3 quarts of sand to the bottom of the mold so that the concrete does not stick to the plywood base. So you can get one of these multi-mix containers, which reads up to 2.5 quarts. It would take roughly 1.5 of these and fill this up and then throw it in the bottom of the mold. So we're going to fill this up. You gotta have your scooper. You could also just pour it if you need to. So roughly 2.5 quarts of sand will work. Next, you must dump it in the bottom of the mold. Okay. Now you can take your hand and squish it around so that you spread it around equally on the bottom of the mold. This will prevent the concrete from sticking to the plywood base. In A0, there's many different sizes of buoys that you could use, but for these size molds, you use the A0 molds, A0 buoys. And basically, these are used as your center bladder for your molds. They make a hollow space when you make the Oyster Reef balls. They make a hollow space inside of them. So basically, you can take a metal rod, which you need to place the buoy in the center of the mold. And then stick your rod in. The rod is what will hold the buoy in the middle of the mold. Alright. Now that we have the buoy in place inside the mold, we can shift it to where it makes sure that it's in the middle of the mold. So you don't want it too far to the left or too far to the right. You know, you just don't want it like that. You want it centered. You want it centered right in the middle of the mold. Just like so. Next, we will use a compressor to blow up the center bladder. First, we must unscrew the top cap on the buoy. Now, the fitting that you can use, this is the fitting I'm using, but most fittings will work. It's just gotta fit this circle. Unscrew this, unscrew the cap. Now we can turn our compressor on. begin to fill the buoy. You can see the buoy expanding. And that's good, right about there. You need to hurry up and screw the top back on the buoy. And that's how we inflate the buoy. The next step is a pretty fun and easy step, and you can buy plastic balls. Plastic balls will work. I bought these at Dollar Tree for $1 a piece. But what these plastic balls do is what you want to do is you want to stick these balls in between the buoy and the side of the mold. This creates holes in your oyster reef balls, which can be used for fish and other marine species to live inside once the oyster reef balls are deployed into the water. So I usually do four balls. So you can do some round. It really doesn't matter what shape they are. Like this football works. So you want to make sure the balls are tight up against the mold. Make sure they fit between the buoy and the side walls of the mold. Once your center bladders and balls are inserted into your mold, you should cover the top part where you inflate the bladder with duct tape because you don't want to get concrete all over the top of the buoy. Because if you do that, you're not going to be able to deflate the buoy after you take the mold apart and the concrete is just going to sit on top. You don't want that. You want to be able to deflate the center bladder once the mold is done. Another important step when making oyster reef balls is to make sure you spray the inside of the molds with either sugar water, or you can also use vegetable oil so that the concrete does not stick to the sides of the molds. So right here I'm using sugar water, in which I will spray on the sides of the molds to make sure that the concrete does not stick to the side of the mold. This is a very important step and could alter the way your oyster reef balls will turn out. Okay, the next step is mixing your concrete. And of course the funnest step is probably one of the most toughest steps and dirtiest steps of making oyster reef balls. But once you get the hang of it and you're able to come up with the right consistency of concrete, you'll have fun. First, for the concrete, we're going to be using commercial quickcrete Portland cement, type 2, type 1, and type 2 Portland cement. Now, you will need to mix 3 gallons of Portland cement. So that means 6 of these 2-quart containers. Okay, the next step when mixing concrete is using microsilica. Microsilica is used to make the concrete harder and gives the concrete more of a texture, so that it also builds its hardness so that when it's placed underwater, the oyster reef balls will remain intact, of course. So we're going to use 2 quarts of microsilica in our mix. Now that we have 2 quarts of microsilica, we will add that to our concrete, our 3 gallons of concrete. Okay, next step when mixing the concrete, we use quickcrete all-purpose gravel. So gravel, you could pick this up at Home Depot or Lowe's, any of your hardware stores. We'll be using 6 quarts of gravel in our mix. And then you can add 2 quarts at a time using your here. We use 2 more. We're going to use 2 more of these. After you have your 3 gallons of cement, your 2 quarts of microsilica, and your 6 quarts of gravel, you add an oil-based chemical called Advaflow, which will make the concrete a lot more smoother to pour in. You do not want to put too much of this Advaflow because your mix will be too runny and too watery, and it just won't work out. So you're going to add 3 capfuls. So 1, 2, 3. That is all you need to make this mixture good. Now the next step obviously is to add water so that you can make the concrete mix into concrete. So what you want to do is add some water so that's wet. Get it pretty wet. You don't want this too dry, but you want to mix it quickly with your hoe. You want to mix it up, push it around, and then you want to add more water. Okay. Make sure not to add too much water at one time, else it will be too watered down. And you don't want that. You want the right consistency. Make sure to stir it all up. As you can see, we still need more water because it's still too dry. Okay. Continue to mix it. Oh, I almost forgot. You need to add a pinch of fiberglass to your mixture. Just like so. Instead of dumping this concrete into your mold out of this tub, we can use a 5-gallon bucket and pour the concrete in the 5-gallon bucket so that we can, so that if there's still some dry stuff, you can add water later while it's in the bucket. I'm gonna scoop the rest out of here into the 5-gallon bucket. Make sure you get everything out and that you don't leave too much in here, else you will not get enough concrete in your mold. If there isn't enough water in here, you can add some later, like so, and use your little shovel to mix it up until it's it's kind of like a slimy consistency. Not too watery, but almost like sludge, kinda, like that. Like a runny mix. Now, you don't want to pour concrete all the way to the top, because then you won't be able to get at the nozzle to deflate your buoy. So what you want to do is pour it in slowly, equal on both sides of the buoy. Slow, do not push it too much. Okay. Make sure to get all out of the bucket, all 5 gallons. And now, as the concrete starts flowing down into the mold, you must tap the sides of your mold so that the concrete sets well in the mold. Now that we have poured our concrete into our molds, as you can see here, it pretty much wraps it up. What you want to do is you want to wait at least a day for them to dry. You want to make sure when you pull the molds out that they are dry and that the concrete has dried up and that they are hard. You do not want to pull them out wet while they're in the process of still drying. Thank you for watching this video, and I hope the Greene School students learned a lot, and I hope that this video will help Greene School students in the future be able to make oyster reef balls and to work with the Nature Conservancy or any other conservation groups in restoring oyster reef habitat. Thank you for watching this video, and I hope the Greene School follows this legacy project, and I hope that yours come out as good as these. Also, if you are left with any other questions, feel free to email me at npimental97@gmail.com at any time, or you can check out my YouTube video under my account, or you can just press on the link in my Wix page and it'll bring you right to the YouTube video. And I will also leave my email in the description below. Thank you for watching.